What's up, YouTube? Brett Hoover from RANTS here. As always, guys, if you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Uh, Always leave us a comment down below. We love hearing from y'all. We're a site by fans for fans. We're on the road to 1,000, and we could use your help on it. Today, we're going to be talking about something a little different than what we normally talk here on Rants or Us. We're going to be talking about the new Lord of the Rings series and supposedly the nudity that's going to be on it. Now, I just want to set the record straight on this. Neither Lance nor I are Puritans by any stretch of the imagination. The only time that the two of us have ever complained about sex scenes or boobies or anything like that on anything is when we feel like it takes away from the story. Well, unfortunately, that happens a little too often, especially on shows like HBO or on places like HBO, Cinemax, Showtime, Stars. They use sex as a means of trying to replace the actual story. I feel like it's juvenile. I feel like it's sometimes it's needed. Don't get me wrong. There's times where there's sex scenes that are needed and sometimes even a must in shows. So that's not my complaint. That's not my complaint at all. My complaint is whenever you're dealing with, when it comes to things like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, or any show that is has fan bases that range from 90-year-olds to 10-year-olds. I feel like you take away a large chunk of your fan base. You when it becomes shows that you can't enjoy for your with your children anymore. It's not like I always grew up, just excited about the idea of someday introducing my son to Star Wars. Granted, after seeing the new Star Wars films, not so excited, but yet I'm still not broken on it. I'm not one of those of the fan base that is like, screw Star Wars, don't want any part of it anymore. I still will always be a fan of Star Wars. I just pray that they start taking a better route with the way they're doing. They need to get away from this identity politics. They need to be starting to focus more on story, character arcs. They need to stop trying to destroy popular characters that we have because of the gender of who those characters are. They need to let the story take them wherever it goes. Okay. That's my biggest complaint with Star Wars. But as far as Tolkien is concerned, in Lord of the Rings, I feel like when it comes to Lord of the Rings, that was a show that was, Tolkien's original goal was to create this literary fantasy world that could be like, it was for really his country. He wanted to make a mythology that would live throughout the test of time, that England would be known for. He was big on that. He felt like mythology in England had died and after the Norman invasion, and he wanted to recreate some of that in his stories. And he was a hardcore Catholic. He was a very religious man. Very religious man. Now, I don't know if y'all know this about me. I know I've told y'all off and on some of my videos, but I'm also a writer. I've got 2 published books. They're both children's books. Now, I can feel bad for Tolkien in this regard. Tolkien wanted his stories to be for everyone. He wanted his mythology to be something that kids could grow up with and enjoy just as much as adults as they did with kids. So whenever you're taking a story like that and that's supposed to be created for everyone, and then you are somehow mixing it with more adult themes, you're taking away from what the writer wanted. Now, as far as my books, the Doodlebergs, are concerned, I would hate if 100 years down the road, if they ever become popular and they ever took off by any stretch of the imagination, I would be, excited about that. But would I want someday, because, I don't know, a network can, for them to take my story and that is meant for children and somehow turn it into something that is sexually based? I would not be happy about that as a writer, because that's not my intended goal. Now, if that's my intended goal, I don't have a problem with it. But as far as I am as a writer, I would not appreciate somebody putting in themes in my books that are not necessarily what I want to promote myself. Now, as a very religious man, Tolkien would probably not be for sex scenes in his in anything that had to do with his series of any kind. So to me, that's kind of a big deal, and that's kind of where I'm coming from on this. I don't personally have a problem with sex scenes and things. Like I said, my biggest complaint with certain things is I feel like sex is what sells, and the storyline is always second in a lot of these things. Amazon Prime, HBO, all of these stars, they have all had great series at one time or another that there's sometimes that I'm like, we had 20 minutes of sex scenes and maybe 30 minutes of, storyline. I guess as an adult, once I hit my mid-30s, I'm kind of like, I want to be entertained. I want the story to constantly be moving forward. I don't want it to just pause so that they can have some nudity here and there. I don't want it. I feel like that is the go-to for lazy writing. That's just where I come from in that regard. I feel like showrunners put that in the shows a little too much. Now, I just for that simple point, not because it actually benefits the show, but because they just know that that's something that it's on HBO, and so therefore they can. Now, as far as people comparing this new Lord of the Rings series that, it hasn't even come out yet, and all of these are rumors. These are all rumors. As far as them comparing that to, let's say, George R. R. Martin's Game of Thrones, like I said before, those are like comparing apples to oranges on that, because George R. R. Martin, his goal is for that. He wants the sexually based stuff. He wants the shock moments. He wants the, hey, you enjoy these characters, so we're going to, kill them off, unexpectedly to give you a shock, because he didn't want the normal fantasy trope, and rightfully so. That's his books, and that's what he wants, and it's worked for him. I personally enjoy Game of Thrones, and I've enjoyed A Song of Ice and Fire. But as far as Tolkien was concerned, Tolkien had a real clear message in his books that, and I felt like they did a pretty good job in the movies as well, of presenting this story, this basic story of good versus evil. There wasn't all these gray characters that was in the middle. There was a clear faction of bad, and there was a clear faction of good. And there wasn't all of this, yes, there was romance in it, but it was a typical kind of romance for the day. We got to realize these books were written, 60 years ago now, or longer. They were meant for that time period, and he was a writer for that time period. I just don't want them to mess up a literary classic like Lord of the Rings and just make it into a orgy, I guess you could say. You know, don't get me wrong. I think some shows do it perfectly. I feel like the boys have done it pretty good. They'll have, you don't see much sex scenes in that, but you'll see it from time to time. I even kind of felt like Lovecraft Country kind of does it pretty well. They don't push the sex scenes as the main story. They drive the story, and then if the sex scenes, play a role in it, then they add those into the mix. And I feel like that's a show that's something that few shows actually can do well. And it's only because they feel like they can get away with that. And so that's my biggest problem when it comes to this. I'm a little disappointed by this news. I just kind of feel like, and I hate to say this because I sound old, and like I said, I sound like a Puritan in a lot of different ways, but I just want some things in this world to be, from my childhood to remain child friendly. I'm not one of those that's like, oh man, it'd be great, if you could take like, I don't know, something like, let's say a cartoon like Gargoyles, and then somehow create like, something that's similar to The Boys with it. Like, I don't want that. I don't want necessarily, there's some things I want edgy. There's some things that I would prefer to be edgier. Take a good example of a show that I love, Supernatural. I would love for Supernatural to be on something like Amazon Prime, because I could just imagine the blood and gore and all the stuff that Dean and Sam could have got away with on that show on Amazon Prime. I think it would have actually bettered that show. But as far as the showrunners constantly messing with children's, I won't go so far to say Tolkien's work is made for children. It wasn't necessarily made for children. It was just made for everyone. But I will say this: I don't think that they have a right, when it comes to Tolkien, to go and place these things into these messages and these, nude scenes or whatever in these shows, simply because they can. And it mostly has to do with, as a writer myself, I just wouldn't want my work to be treated in that same fashion, and I don't want his work to be treated in that fashion. George R. R. Martin, when it comes to Game of Thrones, he's capable of telling them at any time, hey, you're going too far, or I don't like this kind of stuff. Tolkien's not around. And I kind of feel like they're doing him a great disservice if they do this. Just leave some things alone. I mean, that is my biggest complaint, is I just want some things to be left alone. Some things, they don't have to be pure. Nothing's pure. They just have to be, what fans loved about them to begin with. Not everything has to be edgy. Make an edgy show over here. Like I was saying, we just did, here on Rants or Us, we just did our videos over, episode by episode of The Boys. That's edgy, and that's fine, because the comic books were edgy themselves. In fact, the comic books were probably edgier than what the show is. So that's fine. And, they have a right to do that. It fits in with that narrative. I just don't feel like with something when it comes to Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Star Trek, Doctor Who, any of those kind of things that have fans of all different ages, I just don't think it is a smart marketing tool to take away experiences of certain groups of fans. Because let's face it, that's going to be, that show, if they do that, will be for, 19 to 40-year-olds, but all the people that grew up with Tolkien that are older, and all the people that are younger, of course that show's not going to be for them. But as always, guys, that's my take on it. If y'all disagree, that's fine. I know I'm kind of rough around the edges when it comes to certain things. But I guess I just see enough stuff on there where I feel like Hollywood just kind of runs out of new ideas and they just rehash stuff. They take great work and then they, I don't know, fill it in with a bunch of nude scenes and I don't know, a bunch of other garbage things to waste time or to make it edgy. And I just feel like it just takes away from the work itself. But as always, guys, let us know down in the comment section and take care.